Hola and greetings, YouTube friends. I seem to be becoming some sort of a backyard dweller in the last while since I'm not at the studio. Don't feel much like painting. Again, I think there is a personal a personal revision in my life. Something is changing. And for the first time in my life, I wouldn't say that I had a level of anxiety around making work, but not far off. I think as much as I enjoy making a painting, there's also a level of anxiety which I begin to question. I've now wondered about this, and I've just told myself, well, I'm just gonna, in regard to the painting part of my life, I'm just gonna sit back and let some things unfold. So I'm becoming a bit of a backyard dweller. I've just finished McCoskey's Empty the Cave. I think it's an excellent synopsis. Speculation, obviously, quite a bit of speculation. He's incredibly well researched and read. His bibliography is extensive. The people he invokes and quotes are perfect. That's like fabulous. From Schopenhauer to Rumi to Emily Dickinson. I mean, it's a real cross section of understanding and knowledge and intellect at work. So I really do appreciate his work. But I'm going to call this spiritual hygiene. I was just sort of sitting here and kind of reflecting on, but to some extent, my last video and the idea about learning. And yeah, learning is a curious thing. Learning is something like you understand something about something, and in its highest form, you integrate that thing that you understand, so it becomes learning, truly learning. And the thoughts that I was having is how does one implement, integrate, absorb that thing that we learn and become changed in ourselves, obviously in a better way, transform, if you want to say that, transformed by a process. I'm going to call it spiritual hygiene. And by spiritual hygiene, what I mean is the ability or the strategy that we employ to transform ourselves. And obviously, the knowledge of the world is important. It's something that gives a direction. I think. I mean, knowing stuff is helpful in that it may give a direction. It's like, I'm a curious person. I like to know stuff. I'm interested. As I say, I noodle on things. And I'll bring up Matt from Quantum of Conscience. He did another video. He's doing like tons of videos. The guy is relentless in hammering reality and exposing the bastards, whoever is behind this curious phenomenon we understand to be reality. He dissects it excellent. He's always right on. Now, here was the thing. I had made a comment. There's nothing to learn in this realm. And when I said that, I didn't mean that you cannot gather information and your intellect is involved and working on stuff and figuring things out and exposing things. But then comes the true learning, which is the integration. So this is something that I really lack in Matt's channel, that sense of integration of something that, well, I don't know how he has accomplished or has satisfied himself in that regard. If you actually think it's important or not, I don't know. You may not. I believe it is very important to transform ourselves through, if there is a learning happening, possibly by knowing what's behind everything, the Mandela effects, and the manipulations and all the kind of things, what people call conspiracies, those are all things to get to the bottom of, and you feel better for knowing the truth. I guess you can say the truth about something or how things actually work. But then comes the issue of integration, spiritual hygiene. And what is the strategy? Now, McCoskey outlines an extraordinarily complex, deep, almost decade-like dedication to the process of transformation, integration transformation. So, of course, as a painter, this might sort of make sense to some people, but throughout history, painters have always used tricks. And I'm not saying tricks in a bad sense, but to be able to communicate what it is they want to communicate, and they use whatever means necessary or whatever is at their disposal. I'll give an example of people always thought what incredible talent people have in terms of representing or rendering a certain thing out there, eye-hand coordination, and it's clear that the mechanism or the machine known as the camera obscura was a go-to thing that quite a number of painters used in the Renaissance. Easily proven. So what when I'm thinking about, okay, how do you talk about I would say a couple of decades anyway of this introspection, this going deep within and reevaluating himself and coming out at the other end with the notion of emptiness. So here I'm going to introduce something that I've been often talking about, and that is the highest form of integration, short of all the stuff that McCoskey talks about in terms of looking deeply and eliminating everything and nothing is left, the emptiness idea, that I'm proposing for myself. I'm thinking about this in terms of acts of conscience. So acts of conscience will, in my estimate, one of the highest forms of our humanity is to be dealing on a level of conscience, which includes sympathy, empathy, even what a lot of people refer to as love, if you want. Without conscience, there's no love or any of the other things. You may impose certain feelings within yourself and say, oh, I'm loving and this and that. But without a true conscience, you cannot make excuses for any kind of behavior. It's absolutely crucial to have this mechanism functioning in us. So here's what I was thinking, and I'm not really gonna question McCoskey too much, but I do question Matt somewhat, because this continuity of revelations, to what end? And he admits, I mean, he says, you know, I have a half a page that I can present, but I keep doing it, and maybe it's a noble effort in order to, the more and more you dissect, the more likely it is for people to become convinced that something is untoward, that it's not right, but they have to consider the possibility that we are being undermined and manipulated. So the next step, so that it is a kind of learning, but not for me. Once you have made that leap, and that is what it is, with all the facts and pertinent information, there's still this feeling within me of making a leap, that there is, in this reality, this is basically, it's, as McCoskey says, it's an insane asylum. To think any other way makes no sense whatsoever, and I don't need a lot of proof anymore. And if that is learning, I have learned that. But the true learning is the next step, the spiritual hygiene, to clean house. McCoskey brings this up, to clean house. And how do you clean house? How do you actually establish yourself with such a powerful grounding of being in the right frame of mind, being in the right place, being in the rightness of things? And this is conscience. And I'll just give an example, what just happened to me in regard to what I guess maybe that's why I'm posting this. I was selling a hot water tank, and it had been sitting in the basement for about 3 years or so. And there was I replaced it because the tube, the hot water tube, they kind of disintegrate. It took maybe 7, 8 years for it to disintegrate and was rusty, and the water was rusty. So I changed the tank, but I did replace the rotten tube on it just in case I needed a backup tank. But I switched the house to a demand system where the water is like you don't have a tank that accumulates anything. It just sort of gives you water as you need on demand. And I put it up for sale, and I had it sitting for maybe 6 months or something advertised, and a guy came and bought it, and I charged 50, he gave me 60. And unfortunately, one of the seals on the tank, maybe from standing a long time, had busted, and it leaked. So he installed it. He went through the trouble of installing it, and he said, oh, he was really pissed off. He was pissed. And, in a way, I should have thought, well, you know what? The tank is like 8 years old, that I used it 7, 8 years. It was sitting around for, maybe 2, 3 years, and it's iffy. But I said $50, it's no big deal. Hopefully it'll work for you. And the new ones are around 900. You're paying close to $1,000. So hey, take your chances, I suppose. Anyway, he called me up and he said, oh, what you sold me is a piece of junk. It was leaking. It was all. And I thought, shit, I should never have bothered selling it. I should have just, somewhere in my mind, I said, just ignore, forget about 50, 60 bucks. Just scrap the thing, right? Anyway, he was really disappointed and pissed. So after a little bit of back and forth, he expected me to say, well, fuck you, your problem. Buyer beware. I didn't make any guarantees. Yeah, all of that stuff. But I felt badly for him. So I said, look, what can I do to make this right? And he said, well, yeah, my carpet was wet. I spent a whole night and blah, 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 whatever he did. And I said, look, I don't feel good about this at all. I wish it would have worked, but it didn't. So I'm gonna send you back your money. And he said, well, yeah, that's okay. So, but instead of sending him $60, I sent him a couple of $100 because of all the shit he went through. It wasn't, it was just bothering me. The fact that I didn't sort of clue in and say, well, you think that it was a good tank. And I figured, no, it'll work. I'd replaced a tube on it and whatever, but it had been sitting for too long, I think. So the seals on the gas thing, whatever he said, was leaking. Anyway, I sent him a couple of $100, and he said, oh, you didn't have to do that. It was like, oh, the 60 would have been fine. And I thought, I said to him, look, I never intended to screw you with this. You were really put out. I'm happy to give you the couple of $100 because it was as much as my fault as he should have probably tested it before he put it. But anyway, so I feel on the right side of things in that regard anyway. He still put out a lot more. I mean, he put the effort in to hook it up, and it can't be compensated, the amount of time he put into it. But what was really good is he was literally, after being totally pissed off with me, he was like, my God, you're fabulous, Tom. Okay, a couple of $100, I'm fabulous. Okay, terrific. I wished him the best. He called me my friend. I said, yes, I wish you all the best. So it's kind of like these exercises of rightness are the integration of the thing that I'm learning, not about how fucked up the world is or how things are going sideways and upside down and following deer in a headlight. Matt is a bit of a deer in a headlight in that sense because it's over and over. I'd like to know the integration of the knowledge, whatever has been gained. What is the strategy? This is what I'm saying. This is why I appreciate McCoskey, because he's outlined an extremely difficult strategy. And maybe this is what is required. I don't know. I don't know if I have to spend the next 15, 20 years like he did on reevaluating my life. I have a feeling I'm not going to do it. I'm going to find for an easier way, like painters look for ways in order to communicate that what they want to do in the most elegant, I guess that's the right word, elegant of ways. That is, facile, easy. in certain ways. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it certainly is. I don't know. It sort of keeps moving. I can't imagine myself being in a stasis for like years and years looking at a wall. I just don't see it. And if that's required, I guess I'm fucked. So anyway, my point is about spiritual hygiene. Integrating this understanding, whatever that learning might have been of the world, to the inner world, is like integrating it as everything. So I hope this makes sense. I'm kind of enjoying sitting out in the backyard. I usually do this from the studio. So integration. If you have any thoughts, people, if you have any thoughts on how this transition could occur, where we transform ourselves into the person that will be prepared and ready to deal with any of the eventualities we face in the other dimension. And there will be another dimension. I have no doubt about this. This isn't just a matter of the faith part of it. This is as clearly as the birds sing and the Pope shits in the woods. So integrating that aspect, the most powerful tool we have available is feeling right about something, and every day a little bit more. And it's an ongoing, it's not an easy thing, because I'm finding in my personal life there's challenges now that make it very, very difficult to implement the rightness of stuff and make the correct and right decisions, coming from within. Anyway, hope this makes sense again, and all the best to my YouTube friends.